Good morning. Okay lang po ba? You guys see my screen? You guys can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, nice. Okay, so once again, good morning. I am Paul Calimoso, and I am here to talk about protecting personal data in a work from home environment. Everything that we're going to talk about here is actually based from the guidelines from the National Privacy Commission, or NPC. So you can actually check this to the privacy.gov.ph, go to updates, and basically lahat po ng mga, everything that I'm going to talk about today is basically came from this one. So I just simply use this as a guideline uh, in order for me to be able to give you some like a sneak peek of the things that we're going to talk about on the data privacy compliance. So, medyo na-delay lang po tayo ng konti, but yes, let's get down to business. No? Okay. So, as the Philippines was placed under the varying levels of community quarantine to address the COVID-19 pandemic, organizations in the government and the private sector implemented a work from home setup, which is a type of telecommuting. So Telecommuting Act defines telecommuting as a work arrangement that allows an employee in the private sector to work from an alternative workplace with the use of telecommunications and other computer technologies. So basically, lahat po na pag-uusapan natin today will be talking about the technologies that you're using right now if you're actually doing some work from home kind of setup. Uh, Again, the landscape now has changed. Given the public health emergency that the country faces, the National Privacy Commission supports the adoption of the work from home setup as a viable strategy to balance the need to preserve the health and well being of an organization's workforce or its employees with the need to continuously operate and provide services to the public. So, work from home and other telecommuting modes is a management option determined by the organization as part of their BCP, or yung tinatawag po nating Business Continuity Plan, to facilitate organizational operations to continuously deliver work in the face of events such as typhoons, public safety, and public health emergencies such as what we are having right now. Now, the thing about this is that this setup is really not risk-free. One of the primary concerns when we go or when we're talking about the work from home is that unauthorized access to and improper disposal of documents containing personal data due to unprotected home devices and physical files are just few of the potential dangers that comes with it. You know? In a typical setup in a company, we have our IT department to protect our network, to protect our confidential files and data. The thing is, yung pinagkaiba nila now is that we don't have an IT department sa mga bahay-bahay natin. No? So it's really up to us now to how to be able to at least have some security 101 or security hygiene that should be imposed, no, sa mga computers natin. So NPC advised organizations operating under the work from home setup and other modes of telecommuting to consider the following measures to ensure that the data privacy of data subjects remain protected. On these particular guidelines, it's actually focused on the data subjects information and personal information. However, these guidelines actually applies to all of the information that you have, no, on your computers. So these guidelines cover generally, again, security measures that organizations and individuals working on their own can take, not only during the pandemic, but whenever a telecommuting arrangement is really implemented. Okay, so these are the guidelines that we have for this. Okay, I'll just have to, wait lang po. All right, so I'll just leave it here. Okay, so these are the guidelines that we have for the work from home setup. These are general guidelines that NPC set up for us to follow. One is what we call the Authorized Information Communication Technology or ICT assets. Basically, ano po yung mga ICT assets natin? These are actually the company-provided peripherals or hardware na pinaprovide po ni company or ng company natin. Organizations are responsible for making sure that telecommuting employees are provided with the proper ICT assets. Mostly yung nakikita ko po na binibigyan ng mga companies natin are actually laptops and computers. And sometimes they are also providing internet connections. Now, in return, employees are accountable and responsible for the physical care of these particular assets. Now, again, these assets are actually company provided. And what do you call this? These assets are actually parang pinahiram lang po ng company sa atin. No? We call these PC, personal computer, but really, these are company owned. So these are not really intended for personal use. These are actually intended for work use. So yeah, computers and other ICT peripherals, employees should issue their staff, or employers should issue their staff with appropriate ICT resources to adequately perform their duties. Personal devices may be used if provision of organization-owned ICT resources is impractical. So there are some companies naman na if they cannot provide an ICT assets or peripherals or computers, sometimes they opt to ask their employees to use their own computers, which is really, I mean, at least for me, not highly advisable. Okay, so in terms of removable devices, employees are encouraged only to only use organizational issued ICT peripherals such as USB flash drives, USB mouse, keyboard. So think about this is that when we talk about the security kasi, especially flash drives, like what do you call this? When we use a flash drive na parang hindi po company owned, like it's a personal flash drive, usually yung mga personal data natin or mga sensitive information, we used to put them all on a flash drive. Now, if it is a personal flash drive, madalas ginagamit natin ito kahit saan. We use it on other personal stuff. No? So, nangyayari, nagkakahalo-halo po yung mga personal information natin, personal data to these company data. No? And it should not be like that. Okay? In terms of the software, only software authorized by the organization must be used and only for official purposes. Avoid storing the organization's digital files, including those with personal data on external services and software. Now, mainly, yung po mga company-issued computers natin or laptops, no? There comes with installed software already. So meaning, lahat po ng gagamitin natin ng software provided na ng company. Now, the thing is, magkakaproblema po tayo kapag when we install some software sa mga computers na pinaprovide ng company. Sometimes company yung mga binibigay po na laptops or computers ng company, they are being monitored. No? And when you install software there na hindi authorized, nakikita po nila yan. And sometimes, yung mga software na yun, they bring viruses and malware, especially when you downloaded these software from untrusted websites. So hackers or attackers mainly use this software to install viruses on your computers. So as much as possible, if you're using a company-issued computer, stick with the software na naka-install kagad dun sa computers natin the moment na binigay sila. So you don't want to add any other software unless you're authorized to do so. So that's when we talk about the software. Now, in terms of the proper configuration and security updates, I think the best thing that I can suggest to you in terms of the security perspective is that you better be sure, or you always make sure na yung operating system natin or all of the software that we're using are actually updated. No? So install security patches prior to and while the work from home is enforced to prevent cybersecurity exploits and malicious damages, including the following. So what you need to do is to, again, sabi ko nga, automatic update or update security patches on your operating system. You also need to periodically schedule an authorized antivirus software. These are the antivirus software provided by your company. So usually, when the company provides you a computer or a laptop, kasama na yung antivirus software there. No? Automatic update, installation, and configuration of web browser and its preferences. Automatic update and installation of personal productivity software, like for example, word processor, spreadsheet processor, presentation software, and update and configuration of video conferencing software and platform. The main idea here is that you make sure na lahat ng applications or software that you're using, whether it is the operating system or the applications that you're using, let's say for example, yung mga productivity application natin, make sure that they are always updated. Okay? Kasi one of the ways para for hackers to get your personal information out of your computer is by you using not updated operating system or not updated software. So always make sure that everything that you use, every software that you're using are actually properly configured and they are actually updated to the latest security patch. All right, so let's talk about the web browser hardening. So what if this is not the most used, at least this is one of the most used tools or application on your computer right now, because this is actually one of the ways for you to connect to your company or to your employers and to the rest of the clients of your company. So these are a few of the guidelines that we can apply to have a web to harden the security of our web browser. So ensure that your browser is up to date and properly configured. So these are three of the famous web browsers that we have. We have the Chrome, we have Firefox, and if you're into Microsoft, we have the Edge. So these are the measures that we have. And you always make sure that you're in incognito mode or private browsing. So in Chrome, what you can do is to use the incognito window. In Firefox, you can use the private window. In the Edge, you can use the in private window. So what does it do? When we say private browsing, that means it limits the data that being collected. Well, actually, no. It's like para siya nag-create ng session temporarily. And then right after your private session, every data na ginawa mo, or basically the history, yung mga traces ng mga activities na ginawa mo on the browser, kasabay na nawawala when you close that private session. So that's a good way of browsing the internet. One of the measures also is to disable autofill of passwords and information. So ito yung madalas natin nakikita when you go to like for example, you go to google.com or you go to yahoo.com, gmail.com, or facebook.com. Like no need for you to enter the passwords and other information. So although it's convenient to have that, pero it's a good practice that you disable the autofill para at least wala pa nasasave sa what we call cookies natin or just sa cache ng browser. So nangyayari is that every time that we enter the username and password, you know, kapag when we log out or when we close that, nawawala po yung mga a browser doesn't really save or store your information. The thing about that is that sometimes kasi may mga type of attacks or hackers that target these cookies, you know, and then they can get your password and the username. You can also have this what you call prevent tracking. So here on Chrome, what you can do is to enable do not track. On Firefox, you can go to this, enable strict enhanced tracking protection, set to always, send websites that do not track signal that you don't want to be tracked. And in Edge, you can use the enable strict tracking prevention. So what does it do? Um, yeah, if you ever notice when for example, you go to uh, Shopee or Lazada, like for example, you search for an iPhone or a cell phone, and then maya maya when you go to your Facebook, meron kang makita mga ads about iPhone or anything na related sa search mo. Um, Kaya nangyayari yung mga ganong klaseng bagay is because they track your activities online. Now, one way to prevent that is to enable the do not track or prevent tracking. You can also check for password exposures and breaches and the control permission. In fact, uh, if you're using Firefox, we have this what we called okay, Firefox. You guys can see my browser, right? Kikita po ba yung browser ko? Yes. You guys can see. All right. Okay. So here, what you can do here is that, let's say for example, because data breach happen almost every day. No? Now here, what you can using the monitor.firefox.com is that you can actually type your email email address, for example, and then check kung naging part na ba siya ng some particular breach. Let's say, for example, this is my email address. I'm going to check for a breach on this. Now, you're going to see that this particular email address of mine appeared in 4 known data breaches. No? So something happened in Dubsmash, Job Street, on this particular Ebony app. I don't even know kung kailan ko ginamit to. And the web hosting website. See? Okay, hindi daw po nakikita yung natin. You guys can see now my browser.
Yes, yes, Paul.
All right, so sige, let me go back. All right, so um, one of the ways for you to be able to see kung naging your particular email address or something has been part of a data breach, you can actually use this monitor.firefox.com. So you can just simply type in your email address, for example, and then check breaches. As you can see here, yung email address ko, this email address that I'm using, has been part or appeared in four known data breaches, such as these things. So you might want to check your email address and see kung saan naging part. In fact, here you're going to see kung kailan nangyari yung breach, what actually the data that were compromised. For example, here in Dubsmash, passwords and phone numbers. On Job Street, ito po yung mga compromised na data. So what you can do if these things happen is that change your password right away. So you can actually use this or check that. Para makita natin. Okay. So that's for the web browsers. And then, of course, we have the video conferencing. There's a lot of companies now and employees, employers having a meeting through video conferencing. So if available, only use video conferencing platforms contracted by your organization. So if wala naman, you can actually use those free video conferencing that they use. So when availing of free platforms, only use an up-to-date version, one that offers adequate privacy and security features, and it is actually properly configured. So uh, these are the few of the guidance that we have there. One, you set your meeting in private by default and do not reveal meeting IDs in public domains. One of the concerns that we have during video conferencing is if you heard about Zoom bombing, wherein they're having a meeting and then all of a sudden may mga unknown parties na pumapasok dun sa meeting and then they try to interrupt the meeting. So those kinds of things really happen. No? Require meeting participants a password upon joining and make sure that the meeting host is notified when people join and verifies the identity of each participants. Careful controlled screen sharing and recording. Keep cameras and microphone turned off unless you're about to speak. And avoid transferring files over these video conferencing applications. Also, we have this what we call acceptable use. In fact, this is actually a policy. No? So organizations must have acceptable use policy that defines things that are allowed to use on your ICT assets. So basically, lahat lang ng mga pwede mong gawin on those company-provided laptops or computers, dapat nakalagay lahat dito sa acceptable use policy natin. No? A few of which are this, like for example, personal emails, browsing of news and articles from time to time, social media and networking if this part of your job, and of course, some video streaming. No? So while organizations, ICT assets or yung mga company-provided computers natin should only be used for authorized purposes, the acceptable use policy must acknowledge that occasional personal use by employees may occur without adverse effect to the organization's interests. The acceptable use policy should also define an acceptable and unauthorized use, which may include the following. So, yeah. But the bottom line here, my suggestion is, if it is not related uh, to your job, no, I highly suggest that yung mga gagawin nating activities on those company-issued computers, no, dapat hindi natin doon ginagawa. So we can use our own personal computers to, for example, surf the social media, surf the web, download applications. So you can use your other peripherals or computers sa bahay. No? So if it is a company-issued computer, stick to those things na naka-assign doon. So that's the safest way to prevent no, yung mga security breaches, hacking, kakaroon ng mga virus, malware, and anything that is really malicious that can compromise the data of your company. No? We also have this what we call access control. So personal access to organization data must only be on what we call the need to know basis. That means yung mga data that you're supposed to see are the one that you need to see only. So let's say, for example, you're in the HR department, or like, for example, are you supposed to see those information from the finance department? No. So something like that. It's the, like for example, this is yung organization or the company na yung nakakaalam on what the kind of data that you should have and you should be saying. No? So yeah. So these are anchored on predefined user profiles and controlled via systems management tool. No? And sometimes nakalagay yan sa mga policies natin. Also, requires strong passwords to access personal credentials and accounts. So these are the general rules that we have for passwords. So password must be at least 8 characters long. Actually, now, ang sinasuggest ng mga security experts natin is that password should not be words. It should be sentences, phrases, and paragraphs dapat. No? Comprising of upper and lower case letters, numbers, and symbols as well. So although this thing, the upper and lower case and numbers and symbols, they're good to have. But if you're going to talk about the hacking, yung mga hackers natin already know that you try to do some uppercase and lowercase. You try to change or switch. Let's say, for example, yung letter E natin, gagawin mong 3. No? So those kind of combinations na gagawa na. Let's say, for example, when they do brute forcing, those possible combination of passwords, nagagawa na rin nila. When you're trying to use those things, no? So yeah, just be careful on those things, no? Set also a multi-factor authentication for all of your accounts. If possible, all of your accounts should have a multi-factor authentication. So what do you mean by multi-factor authentication? This is actually another layer of security on your accounts. Like yung mga nagte-text natin yung security code. No? Although I'm not saying that if you have a multi-factor authentication, you're 100% safe. No? Still may mga loopholes and mga ways on how to compromise your accounts, even you're using multi-factor authentication. But the thing is, when you use multi-factor authentication, it adds another layer of security to your accounts. No? So usually, ginagawa ng mga hackers is that, especially if you're not a targeted user, no, ang ginagawa is kapag nakita nila that you have other layers of security na sa tingin nila medyo mahihirapan sila, they move to a different account or different user na mayroong mas mababang security standards. No? So this one is really a value for all of the accounts na meron. And most of the companies nowadays, they offer multi-factor authentication, like yung mga banking apps natin, your social media accounts, your email accounts. Usually they provided this multi-factor authentication. No? But if there's one thing that I can suggest when we talk about password management is that you use a different password to your different accounts. So meaning, if this is your password on Facebook, pagdating mo sa Google, pagdating mo sa Yahoo, iba yung password mo. So use different passwords on different accounts. Now, although medyo mahirap lang ng konti in terms of memorizing it kasi iba yung password mo on this account and then iba yung password mo on this particular account. So if you're having trouble with memorizing these passwords, I highly suggest you look for a password manager. So you can just simply download an app that manage all of your passwords. So by then, all you need to do is to memorize the password of your password manager. Then yung password manager natin, siya na yung bahalang mag-manage ng mga passwords natin on our multiple accounts. So yun. Also, we have this what we call network security. So when organization ICT assets are connected to personal hotspots or your home Wi-Fi, which is really the case now on a work from home environment, please observe the following. No? One, using those computers, do not visit malicious websites. So if you're looking for ano ba, a house na hindi ka madi-disappoint kung gaano karami yung mga viruses and malwares, you go to these malicious websites. You know, they are full of bad applications, malwares and viruses, adwares, and even spyware. No? So yeah. At the same time, look for HTTPS. So when you go to your browser here, makikita natin yung HTTPS. No? S actually means secure, pero what this thing really means is that yung connection mo between your computer papunta doon sa website or doon sa server ng website na pinupuntahan mo is actually encrypted. So you better look for that. And most of the what we call this legitimate websites, they offer HTTPS. So yeah, also as much as possible, ensure high availability and reliability of internet connection. The thing about this is that this one is beyond our control as an individual. No? This one, when we talk about high availability, tsaka yung reliability of internet connection, we rely on our ISPs. No? So we also want to configure the Wi-Fi modem or router. This one, medyo a bit technical, but my what do you call this? My suggestion here in a nutshell is that you don't go for the default. Let's say, for example, kumuha ka ng internet connection from one particular ISP, and then pinrovide nyo yung modem, which is also sometimes a Wi-Fi already. Then meron siyang password na binigay. That's the default password. No? I highly suggest that you change those passwords. No? Usually kasi nangyayari is that those Wi-Fi modem have a predefined password. that are being can be googled easily. No? Not only the password itself ng mismo Wi-Fi to connect there, but also the uh, management console of the Wi-Fi. I highly suggest you change those things. No? Also, you need to review and configure the following. So, all of the current devices connected, make sure alam po natin kung sino yung mga yan. Kasi sometimes what they do, or what hackers do is to hack the wireless Wi-Fi or the Wi-Fi that we have. No? Usually, uso yan sa mga, uh, what do you call this? Sa mga hotspots, let's say for example, sa coffee shop. No? Kaya yun. At the same time, be careful and you might want to check the kind of encryption that you're using on your Wi-Fi. And sometimes kasi yung mga lumang encryption natin, if you're using an old modem or using an old Wi-Fi, no, yung mga type of encryption na ginagamit doon can be easily cracked. No? So just be careful in those things. Yeah. Avoid connecting office computers to public networks such as yung mga coffee shops natin that offers Wi-Fi. Now, if there's a case na hindi mo talaga maiiwasan, no, please use yung what we call virtual private network or the VPN. No, sometimes company also provide a VPN for you to be able to connect to the internal resources ng company natin. So yeah, records and file security. So set up policies to ensure sensitive data is processed in a protected and confidential manner to prevent unauthorized access. Now, these things includes record management policy, policy against posting sensitive documents in unauthorized channels such as social media sites. Now, one of the concerns here is, let's say, for example, two employees are actually talking online and they use Facebook as a medium to talk and to have some conversation. And then this one particular employee is asking for a file from this other employee. You know? And then they use Facebook to transfer files. You know? So those things should be included on the policy na dapat hindi po ganun. Kasi Facebook, for that matter, is an authorized channel. One more thing is that a policy imposing the use of files, digital versions of the physical records whenever possible, and at the same time, a retention policy for processing sensitive data in personal devices. Uh, what do we mean by this? When we say retention policy is that this is where you can see, dito natin makikita kung hanggang kailan dapat yung data nag-stay on a particular storage, for example. So, for example, these particular data based on our policies that after 5 years dapat mag-delete na. So those things should be included on this. No? I've seen a lot of employees na kabigay ng computer sa kanila way back 10 or 5 years ago. Yung mga personal data or these are sensitive data na you're not supposed to be in there na dapat is nandun pa rin. So companies should be very keen on the retention policy. No? Especially when we talk about sensitive data. And of course, we have emails. So when transferring sensitive data via email, encryption of files and attachments should be done. Also ensure that the personnel always use the proper to CC and BCC fields to avoid sending the wrong recipient or needlessly expose others people email addresses to all the recipient. But the main highlight here is that every time that you send a file or attachment, it should be encrypted. All right, we also have, of course, the physical security. So create workspaces in private areas of your home or angle work computers in a way that minimize unauthorized or accidental viewing of others. As much as possible when you set up your work from home environment sa mga bahay-bahay natin, you make sure that it is isolated. You know? Na kapag wala ka or you're sleeping, wala nakakagalaw ng mga gamit. So remember, those computers that were given by your company holds a key to the company's resources. Like for example, sensitive and confidential and personal information. No? So they can use your laptop to get to your company's resources and compromise everything. No? So there, lock away work devices and physical files in secure storage when not in use. Should there be a need to print documents, person must ensure that physical and digital documents are properly handled and disposed of in accordance with office policy. And never leave physical documents with sensitive data but just lying around or use them as a scratch paper. Sometimes I've seen videos kung saan the parents are actually doing work from home and then they took a break for lunch and then yung mga baby nila, pinapakilaman yung mga computers. So we should avoid those kind of things. And that's it. That's it for this. Do you have any questions with regards to this? We only have 1 hour here. Uh, if you can join us on the next Monday for the complete data privacy compliance, we can elaborate more on these things, especially on the type of personal information that we have and how to really secure these things. So, do we have questions about this? I guess the key takeaway here is that you always make sure that these company provided computers or laptops uh, should only be used to its intended purpose. So secure it as much as also to be able to secure it physically and secure it logically. So when we talk about that, we always make sure that our computers are updated in terms of the software, in terms of the operating system, in terms of the software that we use, and don't never ever use a crap software. So for example, yung mga pirated software, please never use these things, and never ever download uh, app installers the, on the internet, especially if it's not authorized by your company. But if it is authorized and you can go, by all means, go ahead. But if not, let's say for example, meron ka nakitang bagong application and you want to try that, meron ka nakitang bagong games and you want to try that here since hindi naman alam ng company mo that you're using your computer to other things, you go ahead and install that. Pero mind you, uh, these employers and companies, they have a means to monitor all of your activities on these company issued computers. So just be careful of those things. So we have a question here. Sir Paul, how do we connect to a reliable VPN in public places? Actually, what you can do there is we have we have actually a free VPN. You can just simply search for a VPN. Uh, and then usually may mga guides naman yung mga yan how to install it and how to use it. However, the difference between a paid VPN at saka yung free VPN is that yung free VPN that you can use, medyo mabagal. Kakaroon ng latency. Although I'm not saying na walang latency sa paid VPN, pero in terms of the speed, mas okay yung paid na VPN natin. At the same time, some security researchers are actually skeptical on the free VPN. So I highly suggest if you working on sensitive data of your company, you can actually use a paid VPN, and you can ask your employers to provide you VPN access. Another question here is, what is the advantage or difference between this free session and the scheduled next week? So the main difference between the two is that on this 1 hour webinar is just flowchart level view of the things. We didn't even go technical in terms of the policy, in terms of how we define the data, how do we secure it, and never talk about yung mga technicalities of the computers. So that's for next week, yung medyo mahabang oras. Pero for this one, it's merely a flowchart level view of things on how to secure your work from home environment. And also next week, we no longer, ano ba, hindi na tayo nandun lang sa work from home kind of setup. We talk about the entire data privacy of the company.